Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. Just wanted to pop in real quick and let you know that in the A block to this episode, right here at the beginning, my microphone, my good microphone, was not turned on, so the audio quality is a bit diminished. I did what I could to clean it up, but just wanted to give you all a heads up. It clears up for the movie conversation. All the mics are good. Sounds absolutely perfect, if I don't say so myself. But that's it. Just a quick little disclaimer. So enjoy the show.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby.
Hello and welcome to Movies vs. Capitalism, an anti-capitalist movie podcast. I'm Rivka.
And I'm Frank. And Rivka, Happy New Year. We've not seen each other.
Year.
Happy New Year and happy holidays. We haven't seen each other since pre-Christmas.
Yeah, we were like break full on.
Don't
any highlights?
talk to me.
Don't talk to me. I don't want to see you. I don't want to see you. No, it was accidental. I mean, it wasn't I just think it was just a very...
Yeah, it was just a low-key holiday.
Just stayed in... I didn't leave the house, so... How could
That's
you
true.
see?
And I went to Seattle to visit my partner's sibling and had a lovely time. Beautiful city. Very rainy, but I really liked it. My hair looked incredible.
Oh, wow. I bet. I don't know if I could. I haven't spent time, so I shouldn't knock it, but I don't know how much of that gray I could take.
Your curls would be...
My curls would be loving it. They'd be...
on another level.
On another level. My brain would also be on another level. But I hear it's like, I get like, I don't like gray.
Very gray.
I'm sure for a week. I'm sure for a vacation it'd be great. Did you do anything else fun? Any other?
No.
I realized you asked me this off recording, and I was like, I did nothing. But then my brain was like, no, that's not. I did a lot of very like the things that I like to do. Yeah. So I did have time to go down some of my hyperfixation rabbit holes, and one of them, just because I don't really have the time or space otherwise to like fully indulge, and so that's one of the delightful things about a break. I'm like, I can just completely lose myself in wherever my brain would like to take me.
Well, did you end up anywhere interesting?
This was actually very useful. I don't even know if it was a rabbit hole, but I remembered I had bought like one of those family tree sites. And so I got deep in, in those ancestors. And I learned some crazy shit. Like, I learned that my grandma had a brother who only lived for 2 days that nobody in the family ever talked about. I just came across this, it's amazing what they have. I came across the birth and death certificate. I was like, Mom, did you know that your mom had this happen? Nobody talked. I mean, they just didn't talk about this stuff. My Jewish side of, that goes back, I found all the way to Kiev. Puerto Rican side, of course, it's just harder to find because there's a lot of African ancestry and Spanish ancestry that's just not accounted for.
Wow.
Intentionally by those colonialists, but...
I gotta do that at some point. That sounds fun. It's
fucking fascinating, but you really need like that. The hyperfixation just really came in clutch there. Because it was just like, this is what's happening and I'm going deep and I don't want to be distracted. Because there's just so many, it is like there's so many places to go and then you find other people who've done it. And my interest was sparked because when my great aunt Ruthie was like her 86th birthday, this Russian guy showed up. So, like, we were just doing something at her old age home. And he was like, I am your ancestor. And Tommy always laughs because he's like, he found us on and Tommy's always like, did he just, like, come for free bagels and lox and, like, just to, like, hang out? It was always like, but he legitimately did find us through one of the, he legitimately is related. So anyways, that's what I was up to. It was lovely. But I guess to our theme of anti-capitalism, it's pretty amazing, just when people say, but if you have time, like, you're not going to have anything to do with it if you don't have, like, designated work and labor. And I find it not to be the case. I do love my work, too, but it was really amazing.
100%.
What you can, how much there is when you have space. Like, it's just amazing what happens when you allow yourself that space. And I can try more actively to create that, but it's very hard with the pressures of life.
Yeah. I essentially had, like, 9-10 days off of work, and that is, like... It's the way you get to live your life on the wage. You're fortunate enough to have like vacation time and you're not like strapped where that becomes stressful. Like just having your time to yourself is such a joy. And so it's sad that it feels so anomalous in our current, political economy. But anyway,
so we were trying to think of what has happened? What has gone down since we've been apart from our audience? And
I watched the new Squid Game, but you have not yet. So we're gonna hold on talking about that. But actually, the big story that has been transpiring over the last few weeks is actually kind of in line with what we talk about in terms of about media and how media shapes narratives, how media is used. So why don't you tell us what we're talking about?
And it is a big story, so we're really only going to touch on this piece of it. But perhaps you have or you have not heard this debate started on Twitter with Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk sort of, I guess, debating against the general MAGA conservative Republican community on Twitter. And it started because of like a Trump appointee, someone who was, I forget the person's name, but someone who was really for this H-1B visa program, which is a program that grants visas to foreign-born workers, typically in like what they call a quote-unquote high-skilled profession, like an engineer or a coder. Well, it really allows U.S. companies to basically temporarily employ foreign workers in special occupations. So it's like special visas, but just for companies because, this is capitalism. So companies get special privileges to do what they want. And again, there's like a whole bunch of debate about that, but we're not going to really get into that. But I will say, like, one of the things about this that is up for debate is just the idea that companies, because again, why would they want to do something like this? It's generally probably because it's profitable to them. And that probably means because they can make use of this kind of visa to get extremely skilled, amazing workers, but also not have to employ them long enough to really give them healthcare, like all the stuff that, like, if you had people in the, U.S. workers who would be more likely to unionize and demand better working conditions. So there's that piece of it that I will note. It's way more complicated.
Yes, you're absolutely right. They can pay, generally what I've been reading is that they often pay these international workers, or these foreign workers, much less than they would American workers. So there's like that pole of it. And then there's more even like nefarious part of this, which is that the companies directly control their ability to stay in this country. If they lose their job, they lose their visas. So companies then have an immense amount of power over these workers that come in on these H-1B visas.
Yeah, and it's so many pieces. But we wanted to read, was this the tweet that started it all, or was one of them?
This was the tweet that kind of like really kicked off the debate on Twitter from Vivek Ramaswamy.
It's quite a long, I mean, I haven't been on X,
you were banned.
Twitter, whatever.
Famously banned.
I was banned. Famously banned. This is quite a lengthy, I didn't realize looks more like an essay to me, but I'm going to read a chunk of it because we want to talk about a specific chunk of it.
So he's basically making the argument for why this H-1B visa program should exist and why rich capitalists should be able to prioritize these workers over American workers.
Right, because, quoting from the tweet, our American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long, at least since the 90s and likely longer. That doesn't start in college, it starts young. Young in capital. Young!
Starts young!
A culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. A culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World or Zack and Slater over Screech in Saved by the Bell or Stefan over Steve Urkel in Family Matters will not produce the best engineers. Fact, I know multiple sets of immigrant parents in the 90s who actively limited how much their kids could watch those TV shows precisely because they promoted mediocrity, and their kids went on to become wildly successful STEM graduates. More movies like Whiplash, fewer reruns of Friends, more math tutoring, fewer sleepovers, more weekend science competition, fewer Saturday night morning cartoons, more books, less TV, more creating, less chillin', more extracurriculars, less hanging out at the mall. And it goes on with the same gist of the idea, but I was like, we really need some movie names were thrown out there, and if there's a place to discuss it, it is here.
This is our angle into the story. I mean, this whole screed that he wrote out is just, it's one of the most out of touch fucking Gilded Age ass types of just like robber baron bullshit things that I've ever seen put into writing in a way that is just like in such a mask off kind of a way. It's so brazen and incredible for that. It's like, you fucking just told people exactly what you thought, which is that you should all be tirelessly working and hustling your fucking asses off for your entire lives just to try to satisfy the market competition that we demand from you. You fucking little cogs, get your ass to fucking work. It's crazy that he wrote this.
It's crazy. It's wild. I will say I did listen to Brianna Joy Gray of Bad Faith has a really great episode on this, and it's a pretty good debate, so they get into a lot of it. But she also did point out that even in this critique, in this cultural like media critique, it's like not even necessarily true that like Stefan would, like, we loved Steve Urkel. Like even within this, you're like, that's not even in itself true.
Steve Urkel literally took over Family Matters. Family Matters was Family Matters is an incredible Key and Peele sketch about this. But Family Matters was supposed to be a blue collar Cosby show, and then they had this side guest character, Steve Urkel, come in for a few episodes, and the audience was like, we love him. He's the star of the show now. That's literally what happened to Family Matters.
And not Stefan. And that Stefan was really like, the actor wanted to play him more. And so there was more Stefan because he was like, I want to play more Stefan and less Urkel. And everyone's like, we want Urkel. So just it alone, you're like, okay, Vivek, your critique there is like unfounded and wrong. But what I also find frustrating is you're like, it's not wrong to critique. Like, this is what we do on this podcast all the time. It's not wrong to critique like the impact of of entertainment on American culture. It's right. It's like, this is what we should be doing it. But you're fucking raw. You're raw. More Whiplash. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Whiplash is a horror movie.
Whiplash is a movie about psychological and emotional abuse within powerful institutions in the creative fields. One of the characters in that movie kills themselves because of how abusive J.K. Simmons' character is.
It's insane.
And he's promoting this as the standard that everyone should be working to. You should be working so hard that you want to kill yourself, is literally what Vivek Ramaswamy is saying.
I feel for him. I'm like, oh my God, like, you need some friends. Like, you need to chill, dude. Anyways, so and there were, again, going back to just, I think there's arguments to be made that he is not making at all. Like, to say, like, yeah, there's elements certainly of American culture that are like, we've talked about them, where you're like, it's intentional, where like they want us to date and keep people. I don't think I would never say keep people lazy as much as keep people addicted to consumerism and not have enough time to like make anything meaningful or like actually spend any meaningful time with friends. So like, if you're at the mall, it's because you're there to consume and shop, not because you're there to spend time with friends and like get off of work. You know what I mean? Or like, maybe that's a way that you can, but it's still centered around consumerism because that's the American cultural piece of this. But like, then to suggest that like the parts that there's so many great parts of other cultures outside of American culture that I think do add to like why we're so great, because we are a culture, we are created from all of this mishmash of immigrant cultures. But then to say like what is so great is just essentially like the hyper capitalism of that ideology, like it's sad.
Yeah, it's wild, and it's very self-selecting in the... I mean, I guess he was, like, taking an aim at, like, children's programming, although he did throw Whiplash in there. Because I find this whole argument incorrect on its face. I don't think our American culture promotes mediocrity. If anything, I feel like from age 5, I had it beaten into my head that I have to work very, very hard at every single stage of my life in order to achieve the things that I need to achieve in order to be a successful, productive human part of this American society. Like, I felt like I knew from a very early age, like, oh, if I drop the ball, I'll be fucked here.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It's not the mediocrity. I think it's like, it's not mediocrity. It's consumerism. Maybe it's obsession with looks. It's like but like that goes back to consumerism, or it's like those kind of things, but it's not mediocrity. And certainly the solution, like you said, is not like intense abuse from a figure. It's not turning up the heat.
No.
And it's more things like, again, this is spoken more in depth about on other podcasts, including the Bad Faith one, but like it's the fact that, Americans have so much debt on their freaking, like how expensive it is to go to school here, like all of these other factors, healthcare, like all of this other shit that means like it is like that much fucking harder. Like, I don't think whiplash is going to help anyone with that shit. Like, get the fuck out of here.
No, and this is also a disingenuous argument because they're not arguing for this visa program because they truly believe in the value of meritocracy. They want this visa program because they want to fucking save money and have more power over their workers. And so he's couching it in this lie and incorrect argument that actually Americans, you just need to fucking start getting whiplashed a little bit better, and then maybe you'll be able to have a good job at the end of it. It's it's really something.
Of course, what's delicious and fascinating about it is that this is a debate happening on the right.
Yeah, that's been
and
very
it's
interesting.
a moment where a mirror can be held up, and I do think it's like, okay, I hope people can look at it and be like, wait a minute, it's not perpetuating mediocrity. What is it perpetuating? What are these things? Like, what do you want? Wait, we don't want to work like we're in whiplash. That's the problem. Like, what can we do systemically to change that?
Yeah.
Give people health care. Hello. No student debt. Hello. Oh, you might be a leftist.
Yeah, this has been a really interesting moment. People have been saying it's sparking some proto version of like right wing class consciousness, which whatever. I think that's probably overblowing it, but glad to see something driving a wedge between these fucking tech monarchs and regular people.
So that's our little touching on it. We knew we were not going to at all cover the totality of this because it's a lot there, but we wanted to touch on the media piece.
Yeah, you can't bring up Boy Meets World or Saved by the Bell and not have us wait it. Also, like, there's so many different, like, so many of those episodes are about, like, do good in school, like, listen to your parents, respect your elders, like, don't break the law. Like,
that was a great episode about, like, the destruction of Adderall, and I mean, classic episode. Also, like, really bad messaging in Saved by the Bell. We are not defending Saved by the Bell, but like not for these reasons. There's a lot of other but you don't see Vivek talking about the patriarchy here. That's not his critique.
No, not at all. All right, well, we have been gabbing long enough. Let's get to our conversation about Rogue One. But first, before we do, we just want to remind our audience that we do not sell ads on this show. We rely completely on community support to keep the show going. And if you'd like to support us, you can do that by subscribing to our Patreon account.
That's right. For just $5 a month, you get to access new bonus episodes and our entire back catalog. Our Patreon link is in the episode description in your podcast player at mvcpod.com.
Also, please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on your player so you do not miss new episodes when they drop.
And a quick reminder that we donate our ad space. So if you're part of a leftist or progressive organization and you would like to run an ad on this program, email us at moviesvscapitalism@gmail.com.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with our conversation about Rogue One, a Star Wars story.
Hey everyone, we've got a great organization we want to tell you about called Creatives Thrive NYC. CTNYC helps artists and creatives build the financial skills to keep art a priority in their lives while still putting food on the table. CTNYC is an innovative year-round training initiative providing expert financial knowledge, trusted resources, and a network of reliable partners to help creatives thrive in a chaotic and unjust economy.
CTNYC is a partnership between ArtBuild, PAM and Dialect, Get Shameless, and the Entertainment Community Fund, formerly the Actors Fund.
These fully funded, completely free workshops share real-world financial tools as well as methods to build a life that fits your budget and your values.
These workshops are 100% virtual, and you do not need to be in New York or even the United States to join. Workshops begin from November 2024 and continue through June 2025.
Register at artbuilt.org/CTNYC and check out artbuilt.org, getshameless.com, and entertainmentcommunity.org.
Okay, today's guest is Will. He doesn't have a book to promote. He doesn't have a podcast to listen to. He doesn't particularly want to be found on social media. He's just a guy from the internet. But he served in the military from the year 2000 until 2007, and then he decided he needed to go back in from 2008 to 2013. Since getting out of the army, he got himself an education and made the terrible mistake of learning U.S. history. Now he's a leftist veteran because if you know a whole lot of U.S. history, you realize that it takes a whole lot of pain to keep this engine running. He has a lot of thoughts about the state of the country, the industrial war machine, and what exactly the future is going to look like from a war perspective. Will is also a member of About Face, Veterans Against the War, which is a group within Veterans for Peace. Welcome to the podcast, Will. We're so happy to have you on Movies versus Capitalism.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, Will, we are very excited that you're here. We don't often have guests on who reach out to us because, surprise, surprise, there's a lot of men out there who like to write in and say, hey, I would love to talk about movies with you guys, and I think you should talk to me. But you've reached out a couple of times, just like sending your thoughts. You've always been super polite. You're just like a great member of the MVC community. And then I think recently you wrote in and you were telling us about your background because we had, which episode were we?
I don't remember which episode, but it was the one where we were talking about leftist veterans because we were talking about Love is Blind.
Oh, we were talking about Love is Blind. That's right. Like all things, Love is Blind.
And we had a great conversation. And to clarify, Will, you didn't even ask to be on the podcast, but based on kind of our back and forth, we asked you, would you join us?
Well, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't hoping at least a little bit, but
So, Will, you served in the U.S. military, in the Army, as Rivka just laid out, and you identify as a leftist veteran. You participate in this group About Face, which is Veterans Against the War. So before we get into the movie conversation, would you mind telling us just a little bit about your journey from serving in the U.S. military to now being an anti-imperialist, anti-war, leftist veteran?
the thing about being in the Army is it doesn't feel, most of the time, it doesn't feel like, you're part of a war machine or anything, right? I joined before 9/11. I was just a guy that was trying to put food on the table for a very young family, right? And then eventually I got sent to Afghanistan. And while I was there, one night I was walking home and I saw, because I walked past the airfield and there were Apache pilots who were struggling, like they were visibly shaken up. And I asked around, hey, what's going on with that? And so it took a few days to find out, but after a few days, I found out that, and a brief content warning, I'm going to briefly describe some war stuff.
Thanks for the heads up.
But what happened was they identified a village as a terrorist stronghold. So the military blockaded it and dropped leaflets from helicopters that said, the women and children can get out, but the men have to stay. And then after a few days, they went in and they leveled the village. I didn't put it together for years, but before we went over there, we took some cultural classes. So you know what to expect. And one of the things that they told us was that there are dozens of languages spoken in Afghanistan, dozens. And many of those languages don't even have a written language. So when those leaflets hit the ground, did they read that language? And if they did they believe it? Could they have believed it? How did they interpret it? I don't know. But the pilots got there and they leveled the village, and they came back because they saw the women and children of that village on fire. And at the time I was like, well, that sucks. And I went about my business because I didn't put it together. I didn't think about it. And frankly, it would have been dangerous for me to think about it at the time because my family's position in the world relied on me being there at that time. You know what I mean? And so after I got out of the Army and the old empathy switches start turning back on in my brain, and I start thinking about, stuff like that, it's like, yeah, that was a horrible thing that I participated in. And my particular job when I was there was to make sure that the pilots and crew chiefs could fly legally, because they're required to have certain safety gear, helmets, first aid kits, harnesses, all that. So I made sure that they could carry out these legal little genocides, because if you level a village and wipe out a generation, I don't know a better word for it. And I've told this story to civilians before, and a lot of them expressed disbelief. And honestly, it happened 20 years ago, almost to the month.
Wow.
And I have no proof of this, but I have never told this story to a veteran and had them even look surprised. And over the time I was over in in Afghanistan, I went to both. But while I was there, every so often you'd hear people come back from a mission and say, yeah, we wiped out a whole village of terrorists.
It's such a moving and heartbreaking story. And I think that's really interesting that for some people it's so unbelievable, but those who've served don't blink an eye. You also shared in one of your emails, which I thought was really interesting, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the process of coming back and sort of your thoughts on why veterans would either move more to the right upon return or closer to the left, or more to the left as you have. And I thought you had some really interesting thoughts on that, if you would share.
Yeah. So thank you for reminding me. When you're a veteran that has gone to war, any war, you get back and you start thinking about what happened. And when like I said, those empathy switches start turning on, you either have to accept what you participated in or justify it. And with, be it the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq or Vietnam or Korea, all, going way back, you either have to choose to feel the weight of your participation or you have to turn to racism. That's what it is. You have to say, those people didn't deserve to live. And the storytelling around that is, oh, they're going to send terrorists over here and hurt your kids. Oh, they're going to send you anthrax. Oh, they're going to do this or they're going to do that, is the story. And looking back, no, it's never happened. I mean, all of the stories that anybody's ever taken to war, those stories have never happened. Going back to the blood libel in the pogroms of Russia, all the way back then, those never happen. Or if they do happen, they're happening on the winning side, right? We train our kids through movies to want to go to war to protect the homeland from the people over there, where we're doing exactly what we're accusing them of.
When I read that in your email, it made a lot of sense. I can't imagine the amount of emotional and psychological trauma that is involved with processing everything that a soldier or a Marine or a pilot or what have you does in the line of duty. And it makes sense that anything you wrote in your email, it's almost too painful to go through the work of processing that. The easier path is to bury it down and then to double down on the justifications for why you did what you did. So it made a lot of sense.
We call it a moral injury.
A moral injury? I've never heard that term before. What does that mean?
Our morality was injured by participating in the war.
Wow.
So while we don't carry the scar on our skin, it's still there.
I see. Thank you very much for sharing all of this. This is hands down, I think one of the realest conversations we've had on this podcast. So I really appreciate your candidness about your your experience.
Yeah, I don't believe in burying the past. You can't have a good
Yes.
future if you bury the past.
100%. Let's get into this movie that you suggested for us, because I'm very excited to talk about it, and I'm sure we'll get it. I'm sure a lot more stuff will come up throughout this conversation.
So what did you think? I'm excited. Are you guys Star Wars fans at all? Or
Oh, yeah.
is this outside your
No, Will, I got a
wheelhouse?
Star Wars tattoo on my shoulder. Come on.
So we'll give some background and then we'll jump into the convo.
Yeah. So today we are talking about Rogue One, a Star Wars story, which was released in 2016. This film was directed by Gareth Edwards with a screenplay by Chris Weitz and Tony Gilroy, with a story credit to John Knoll and Gary Whitta, based on characters created by George Lucas. This movie stars Felicity Jones, Diego Luna, Ben Mendelsohn, Donnie Yen, Mads Mikkelsen, Alan Tudyk, Riz Ahmed, Jiang Wen, and Forest Whitaker. The estimated production budget was somewhere around $200 to $280 million. Just a little small, scrappy picture, independent picture. One of the most expensive films ever made. And then, of course, like all of the Star Wars movies of the 21st century, grossed over $1 billion with a B worldwide, finishing its theatrical run as the second highest grossing film of 2016. So a short synopsis, if you've never seen this movie, we will be spoiling it. Rogue One, a Star Wars story, is a standalone film set just before the events of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, which is the first Star Wars movie to the layman. This film, though, A Rogue One, follows Jyn Erso, the daughter of an Imperial scientist, as she teams up with a group of Rebel Alliance operatives. Their mission, to steal the plans for the Death Star, the Empire's ultimate weapon of destruction. The film explores themes of hope, sacrifice, and rebellion, and is a gritty tale of the brave heroes who made the victory in A New Hope possible.
All right, so the year is 2016, and Donald Trump has just been elected president of the United States, defeating former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. He secures 304 electoral votes and carries 30 states, including several key states in the pivotal Rust Belt region. Meanwhile, Republicans re-elect Mitch McConnell as Senate Majority Leader, while Democrats choose Chuck Schumer as Senate Minority Leader. Americans this year are paying about $15 billion in bank overdraft charges, and the average American household has about $16,061 in credit card debt.
Oh, great. I'm below average. That's great. That's good to know.
The mobile game Pokemon Go became the fastest growing app in history, and for the first time in history, streaming services generated more revenue for the music industry than sales of albums and singles.
Damn.
And at the 58th Grammy Awards, Uptown Funk won a Grammy for Record of the Year. That song is what really put that year in perspective. Like, I was like, yep, I know where I am, Uptown Funk.
That and Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go was, we were all playing Pokemon Go. There was a day at the park near my house where everyone, for adults from age 50 to children age 5, were all in the park playing Pokemon Go. It was one of the most beautiful communal events I've ever been a part of.
And who could ever forget about Pokemon Go to the polls?
Oh man, I still celebrate that moment. And what's not often forgot is the first part of the phrase, which is Hillary Clinton says, "We need to have a," and then she says, "Pokemon Gold to the polls." So.
Oh my God.
We need to have a Pokemon go to the polls. All right. So, Will, you've listened to our show before. You know, the first question we ask our guest is, why did you choose this movie to talk about on this podcast?
This is not only my favorite Star Wars movie, it is my favorite war movie completely.
Damn.
Because, like, I don't dig on a lot of war movies because they're all this jingoistic, rah-rah military bull crap, right? What makes this movie really special is it's a war movie that didn't take money from the military. Do you know about how the military puts its fingers into all these different movies?
Yes.
I do, yes. But why don't you go? You probably know a little bit more than us if you want to illuminate the audience.
So if you want to make a movie with like Black Hawk helicopters or an Abrams tank in it or something, you can spend millions of dollars on getting one of those or renting one, or you can ask the military and they'll give it to you. They'll even help fund your money, except they get to approve and modify the script.
Yep.
And they like to do it all over the place. Like Captain Marvel took lots and lots of money from the military. Just one example. In fact, if you like, there's a guy named I believe Tom Schechter I can hook you up with who talks about this a lot. I can
cool.
probably. Yeah, he's a lot more expert on it than I am. But like on the day after tomorrow, I knew the guys in the Blackhawks in that video. They came from Fort Drum, New York, and they were really excited until they saw the movie. But yeah, so but this movie didn't do that, and I don't think that we would have the movie that we have if they did, because unlike the other Star Wars movies. First and foremost, this movie shows you the cost of war.
Yep.
And that is and the cost of war is people dying. The other Star Wars movies, what memorable costs are there in those? Porkins, right? As that lone TIE fighter dies, right?
Yeah, or like Obi-Wan makes his grand sacrifice. You know,
I wouldn't even call that a sacrifice. He got to go to heaven. You just poof. He's
that's
with
true.
The Force.
Yeah, he
He's
just
a
gets
ghost
to be
now.
like a Force ghost for the rest of time. That's true. Yeah.
But this one, they make you like these characters, and they're all likable. Except, I mean, least of all is Captain Andor, and he gets his own TV series spin-off.
Yep.
So the other thing I really like about this movie is I cannot be convinced that this movie is not about the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And the Empire is the U.S. military.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw this movie and I'm watching the Death Star blowing up desert people from safety and security a million miles away with zero consequences, I was like, oh, they're saying something here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When I don't know if I'm jumping to the end or anything, but
No, you can jump around.
when Chirrut, sorry, I'm terrible with names, but when Chirrut is saying at the end, I'm one with the Force and the Force is with me, I'm one with the Force with me, that's Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. They were the people that we were fighting in Afghanistan, and they made them the hero. You can't do that in a Hollywood movie without pretending it's Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I love everything that you just laid out. Yeah, this is also my favorite Star Wars movie. It's up there. It's like this or Empire, but I love this movie a lot. And everything you're saying specifically about the Empire being the United States. Well, we know that because that was George Lucas's original intention with the first Star Wars. It was a pseudo critique on the war in Vietnam.
It was, but he pulled so many influences for the original movies from Nazi Germany that
sure,
I've always felt it was more Nazi coded than U.S. But this one really merges the two.
It totally does. And you saying especially like the desert, like the hubs of rebellion being based on these desert planets. In this movie, it's not Tatooine, it's Jeddah, or the city of Jeddah, featuring a primary cast that is pretty much all non-white except for Felicity Jones, really evokes the sense that, like you're saying, these are white Western imperial forces coming to some Eastern country, some non-white country, and using their death machine, their war machine, to, conquer them and the galaxy at large.
Extract their natural resources and then use them against them.
Yep, big time natural resource extraction with the kyber crystals, absolutely. So Will, I'm right on board with you. Riv, I would love to hear your take because I'm guessing this is the first time you've watched this movie.
This was a first. I'm not a huge Star Wars. I mean, I've seen Star Wars, but I wouldn't say it's my I'm not a super fan. I don't dislike Star Wars. I enjoy it, but I'm not I haven't watched.
It's okay. You don't have to qualify
I've
it.
rewatched it, So I'm excited to talk about this because it's hard when you're I know this is a much bigger universe than just this movie. But I think knowing we were going to talk about this with you, Will, so I was already sort of anticipating viewing it through a certain lens. And yeah, it pays off. I mean, it has so much to say, so engaging. The characters arc where the acting is amazing. It's complex. There was just a lot of different feelings and opinions I was having. I'd say my only one critique of it is that I wish I knew, and this is probably for, I'm guessing, the whole wider Star Wars universe, I wish they clarified what the rebellion political perspective, like what would happen if they win. I don't know if that's ever said.
They explore that in the Mandalorian series.
Yeah.
And they kind of turn into a softer, gentler empire. And I actually think that that's kind of an important critique, because if you let the people, brutalize people, and if you take the warriors from one war and put them in charge of a government after that war is over, they're not going to act right. After Russia left Afghanistan, the Mujahideen was left in charge, and they were brutal warriors through necessity, and they brutalized their own people. And this gave rise to the Taliban, who was more of a political party and organizing group. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Taliban. I want to be clear, because...
Yes. Well, it should also be noted that the Mujahideen was also being financially propped up by the United States at the same time.
Of course it was. Yeah. Yeah, we love a good proxy war.
Oh, we do.
And when I watched this movie this time, I don't know if I ever clocked it before, but this time the rebellion leadership, I was like, they're fucking libs. One of the parts where that has always got me was when they call Saw Gerrera an extremist.
Yeah.
It's like, you call him an extremist. They're blowing up hemispheres, and you call him an extremist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's doing the only on the ground fighting to stop their resource extraction. And he's being labeled the extremist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks for that's helpful to hear, even that I was feeling right about something that I'm like, I don't feel like this is going to necessarily go in the right direction, but it's a great thing to view and have critique on, because it's a reminder that, like, I think so often we get, and I'll speak for myself, can get so caught up in defining your politics by what you're against and by the antithesis of. I mean, this is an anti-capitalist podcast, but within that means you have to find, so what is the solution? Is it socialism, Marxism? Like, what does it actually look like? And when when the organizing and when the rebellion becomes so, as they have to in this particular case, but like when that all of the organizing is going to just being against something, then it makes sense, like you said, as soon as they capture it and there's no plan and there's not a sense of like, what's the new horizon? What do we do when we retain power? It just becomes a new version of power and oppression, because that is all that is known. So if you take it, it's going to replace it in that similar way.
Yeah. There's going to be a terrible vacuum all over the place.
That is one of my favorite things about this movie. And I remember the first time watching it and being like, damn, I don't think I've ever seen this in a Star Wars movie, is showing from the rebellion's perspective, like you said, Will, like how brutalized people end up brutalizing people, the moral compromises that the rebellion is making in order to further their ends. And it starts with it still hits me every time. The first scene when we meet Cassian Andor, and he is talking to one of his sources, a spy, someone who is ostensibly on the rebellion side because he's passing information. But this man is disabled. They're being pursued by stormtroopers, and he knows that this guy is not going to be able to escape. And so he makes the choice of fucking executing him. This is like an ally. This is someone that is on the rebellion side, but he makes the decision to execute him to protect the rebellion and protect the information that he's passing along.
Yeah, justice for Tivik.
Yeah. Justice for Tivik, dude. He was fucking scared, man. He just was like trying to help. He was scared. And there are several other points in the movie where they does this, and then they also explore it in Andor, and even the TV series Andor, in even greater detail about how revolutions can and sometimes like necessitate a sort of oppressive violence that the revolutionaries themselves wouldn't agree with in a different context and in different circumstances. But it starts here in Rogue One, and it's fascinating because it's like, what does organizing a revolution under intergalactic fascism actually looks like? It looks pretty fucking down and dirty.
Yeah.
and making choices that we, the audience members, aren't agreeing with.
So one of the things that always gets me when Jin, and by the way, Jin is a Muslim, not an angel, but like a being, like genie comes from Jin, and I wonder if that was also a reference that they did on purpose or not. But
Interesting.
But when Jin is reunited with Saw Gerrera, you can tell that he's an incredibly damaged man. Like, not just physically, but like 1 minute he's talking to her like a loving father figure. Then he's defensive. And then, did you come here to kill me?
Mm-hmm.
There's not much of me left. And every time he says there's not much of me left, I don't think he's talking about his body.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think that's the moral injury that I was talking about before. He knows that
Yeah.
there's not much of him left. Because even if you're not doing the killing, he's sending his comrades out to fight and die.
Yeah.
And you send a piece of you with him every time. Especially if you're in an organization where you actually care about your subordinates,
Yeah.
So
I mean, he sicks the Boar Gullet on Bodhi, even though there's
Yeah.
valuable information in there. He's like, Boar Gullet,
a moral-
would your mind?
Oh, wow.
And we know it's.
Again, that was so good.
Thank you so
that's
much.
that's a moral injury too. Torture
Lies, deception. Sorry, Will, I cut you off.
Oh no, it's fine. It's but coming to a place where you have to torture people, that's a terrible
Exactly.
position to be in too. I mean, it's not just the killing, it's all of it. And then when he decides not to run anymore, it's like, gotta respect it.
Yeah. Another thing this movie does really well is it starts to give you more of an internal look at the structure of the Empire and like the machinations behind the scenes. And that's represented by director Krennic, played by Ben Mendelsohn, starting to become an MVC favorite. He was just recently in Killing Them Softly, we just watched.
Yeah, he's really just
love Ben.
different characters. Like, such a great actor.
Oh, entirely different characters.
Yeah.
He's really easy to hate.
Killing Them Softly, he's like a wet, slimy heroin addict, and here he's a posh fascist. But you start to see the internal pressures within the Empire, and is obviously not justifying anything that he's doing because he's the one in charge of the development and construction of the Death Star. But we see the pressure that he's getting from Grand Moff Tarkin, and just how the downward pressure of, I don't know, autocracy ends up pushing people to compromise even more of what they would be or what they would be doing. He is inherently evil, but so much of his motivation is just like, I don't know, it's like wanting to succeed within the corporate structure.
Yeah, he's a great example of the banality of evil, right? Most people in these positions of power, they don't want to hurt people. They want the paycheck and they want a promotion. And if people get hurt, meh.
And this movie also really does incredible world building of the galaxy, like the Star Wars galaxy, the expanded universe, for lack of a better term. Like when we meet Jin, she is in a labor camp. She is like she is a prisoner in effectively a concentration camp until the rebellion springs her out. And then on this watch, it was the first time I had this thought, was just like, man, the rebellion is really, they're just using the shit out of her. And they are coercing her into joining this plot to begin with. They say, they're not just like, hey, we sprung you out. You can either join us and help us out, or you can just be on your merry way. No, if she doesn't help them, they're like, we're sending you back to the labor camp. Like, these are ostensibly the good guys saying, hey, if you do not help us with our subversive plot, we'll send you back to the labor camp. And just another example of how compromised the rebellion is at this point in the story.
Well, I don't think that that's an ethical thing to do. I kind of understand it because she's the only one that can solve the riddle of getting those Death Star plans. Nobody else in the galaxy was positioned to be able to figure that out.
Sure.
Right? When she saved the little girl, I thought, well, that was actually kind of irresponsible. Well,
because she needs to stay alive.
Yeah, because if Jin had died doing that, then the rebellion never would have got the plans, right? And so in real life, that's a very silly thing to think, because I don't subscribe to the big man of history, right? If such and such person didn't exist, someone else would have filled that gap relatively about the same time, But within the story structure here, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, Andor could have jumped out and saved the little girl,
Yeah, we don't need him.
but he was like, now she can. Yeah. I thought the character of Jin was really interesting. I thought it was really interesting at the top when we find her. Like you said, she's in this camp, but she has one line where I can't remember who, maybe you can help me, who she's replying to, but where she's like, I never had the luxury of political opinions.
It's her first scene with Cassian.
Yeah.
And he's like, you don't care. They're trying to convince her to join the rebellion, he says, you don't care about the cause? And she says, the cause has only ever brought me pain. And then I've never had the luxury of having a political opinion.
Yeah, that's one of the lines that I actually don't agree with, because not having a political opinion is luxury.
Yeah.
True.
Right?
That's what that's why I liked it, because she's wrong. And so I think it gives her character a place to go, because I wouldn't say that she agrees. I feel like part of her, I wouldn't say that where she ends up, she would say that same thing at the end of the movie. Do you feel like she would?
Okay, yeah. No, you're right. I misunderstood what you meant, but yeah, she was wrong at the beginning, but by the end, she was all in.
But you're right, exactly what you're saying, that like it is a luxury to not have one. But I think so often where she's coming from, and I think so often, I mean, maybe there's a lesson in terms of how we bring together a working class and talk about politics with people to get them on board, is like acknowledging the reality she's naming, which is that so often people feel like, I've only been hurt by this shit, so please tell me why I need to get involved. Like, I don't have time for this. And then I think it's the job of the arts, of people who talk to other people about politics, to acknowledge that and express why it's actually the reverse, why you actually, like, it's a luxury to not have a political opinion. And you probably do have one, but maybe not in the way that you're thinking about it.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I was gonna push back a little bit and say basically the same thing, Riv. That like there are people who actually have the privilege and luxury who aren't bothered with politics because nothing affects their material circumstances. But then there are the people, like I think you are sort of laying out, which are people who have it so difficult within their material circumstances that they don't have time to have a political opinion. Like they don't have the time or the energy, or like you're saying, they've been hurt too many times. They have no faith in the system. So, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, if you've got kids to feed, if you've got multiple jobs, like when the fuck are you going to have the time to read the news and then like get organized and get involved with your local, mutual aid organ or like whatever. But you're right. It's something that I think we as leftists for sure need to be able to bring people into the fold on.
Well, to even just to simplify, like, what is it to be political? It's like you just start to, it doesn't have to be complex. Like you inherently already are. And just like waking up to that reality, I think can be pretty profound. It's like, I'm going to butcher exactly what the quote was, but I thought it was really brilliant from Nina Turner recently, just had, I think, tweeted out like, the working class, do you go to work for a paycheck to like pay for yourself to live? Like you are part of the working class. She said it more succinct than that. But I love that because I think sometimes people can get so bogged down in like, what does it mean? what does working class mean? And these larger sort of not useful ideas that we collect on our journey from wherever. And really it's like, it's that simple, and I think politics can be that simple too,
I'd love to hear both of your opinions about Galen Erso, played by Mads Mikkelsen, Jin's father. It's an interesting plot device in story construction. Is that so? He's when we meet him, he is a disaffected imperial scientist, and the first scene is him being kidnapped by the Empire to come back and continue working on the Death Star. When we reconnect with him years later, we learn that he has been playing his part. He's been helping build the Death Star. And I think we should also talk about the Death Star in a minute as like, it's like Star Wars' nuclear weapons.
In America, we would call it the Freedom Star.
It would absolutely be the Freedom Star, just spreading democracy throughout the galaxy. But then we learn that Galen has basically elected to build the Death Star so that he himself could build a flaw, a weakness within it that would make it susceptible to being destroyed easily. So it raised an interesting question about, I don't know, subterfuge within the imperial fascistic structure. How do we feel about that? It's conflicting because on one hand, and the characters within the movie are conflicted about it. They're like, why the fuck should we trust this guy? He literally helped build this giant death machine. I don't know if there's a lot of like real life parallels to that, but I don't know. That was something that just stuck out to me where I was like, I know the movie wants us to be on Galen's side, but ultimately he basically was with the Nazis for, like 20 years, like doing his thing.
Right.
First, I think that was a plot device that they added to explain away the vent that can blow up the Death Star. Because
they
people
definitely
make
did
it fun.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. But as for subterfuge within the military industrial complex, the first thing that pops to mind, I know that it's a bit loaded because of historical inaccuracies, but in Schindler's List, they were having the Jews make the munitions poorly so they would not work on the battlefield. I mean, that's the first thing that pops into my mind. I know that 2004-ish, I think, someone had enough and threw a grenade into his platoon's tent. I'm not sure that that's the best way to go about protesting the war. He certainly didn't change any hearts and minds on that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's because it's so built into the plot. I'm like, what other way? Because if Galen took his own life, refused, protested, they kill him, I would imagine there's they could find some other scientist.
It's a big galaxy.
I'm conflicted.
I don't know. It just makes me think of some politicians that are like, I'm going to change things from the inside. But I guess he actually did something. He actually does. So maybe this critique isn't warranted. I don't know.
Well, it made me think. I was like, huh. Well, if the people who said, the politicians who are like, I'm going to be the subterfuge, like, kind of what we're still waiting on our quote unquote squad to do. I'm just like, so when is the subterfuge coming? When does that?
Any day now, they're going to get to it.
Have you ever eaten rich people food? It's like really good. No, I used to work events and we'd get like leftovers after like events with like really big names and stuff like that. And it'd be really hard to go back to ramen if you've rubbed elbows with the highest members of society.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, this makes me think about too. I have questions about the Senate, and maybe also as Star Wars aficionados a little bit more about, is the Senate, were they all citizens? Like, this Senate feels very familiar to like, I guess our liberal / left of like the inability to agree, but what was up with the Senate?
Well, it's dissolved by the beginning of the next movie.
Well, saw that. You could see that coming.
Is it dissolved or is it just like basically a puppet Senate?
No, they say that at the beginning of the movie. I wanted to find something in the next one, so I followed.
The beginning of New Hope?
Yeah, New Hope. So I watched the first part of New Hope, and I thought Grand Moff Tarkin looked bad in this one, but then I saw him in A New Hope, and they made him prettier. Maybe it's the Blu-ray, I don't know, but he was like yellow with bloodshot eyes and stuff like that.
Okay.
And it's like, oh, he doesn't look good in either of these movies.
Wait, is that the Toad?
No, that's the guy that was trying to fire Krennic.
Oh, okay.
Did you? This is a good question, Riff. Did you know that actor was CGI? Could you pick up on that?
So the guy who tried
the older English actor
who
had all of his scenes with Ben Mendelsohn, who kept
No,
being like,
I did
Director
not.
Krennic, the Emperor.
I did not pick up that was CGI.
Wow. Okay.
Really,
All right.
I think he looks like an abomination. But
I'm sure if you have reference for the original, but I was not
Okay.
comparing.
My wife didn't notice either.
So there you go.
Well, that actor has passed away, as you might imagine, since the first Star Wars came out in 1977. So they used the CG likeness.
And I was shocked I thought Princess Leia at the end looked pretty
Yeah, it looked good. Yeah, it looks. Yeah,
realistic too.
But I mean, they recast Mon Mothma.
that's true. They did, and she features heavily in the Andor series. It's a really great character. But Riv, in terms of the Galactic Senate, I guess it dissolves sometime between this movie and the next movie. So basically, the galaxy was a quote unquote democracy for thousands of years. Basically, you had the Galactic Senate, and then you also had the Jedi Council, which was sort of like the Supreme Court. They were unelected, and they kind of wielded ultimate power over everybody. But they were good, except for the ones that weren't. And so the events of the prequel movies of, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones,
That happens before this one.
Return of the Sith. Those all happened like 20 years before this. But in the prequel movies is basically the ascension of the Emperor, who was a senator and then becomes the chancellor and then consolidates power and is like, I'm emperor now. Senate doesn't have any power anymore. So that's where that was like about 15, 16, 17 years before this movie. So that's where we are now. Like Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia are the ages that they are when we meet them in A New Hope.
Got it. So
Rivka is falling asleep.
I'm like, wait, so why does the Senate doesn't really have any power? Why are they having,
No, so
who are they so they're essentially just like an organized, a quote unquote organized left, but they're not organized and they're factioned.
The rebellion is, yeah.
Yeah, the rebellion's not affiliated with the Senate. But
that's what I'm getting confused about.
The Senate, they have about as much power as the Democrats are going to have for the next couple years, just enough to be loud and annoying. So they don't need to know about the Death Star.
I see. And so the rebellion, who were all the people at the table who were like, no, we would rather.
That's the rebellion.
I see. So the rebellion's but they all had to vote. Like, what is the deal with the rebellion? How are they organized?
I'm not entirely sure, but they have a rank structure. So it's some paramilitary organization.
Yeah, I haven't dug too deep into the rebellion's organizational structure, but don't worry, Riv, if you're interested, someone definitely has. There definitely is expanded universe content. So if you want to get really deep on what's going on within the hierarchy of the rebellion, you can. I'm sure there are novels about it.
If you don't like the answers you find, there's a whole different set of novels that don't count anymore that you can choose from.
That's true. That are no longer canon.
Disney said that doesn't count anymore. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but they're a loose coalition of different, I wouldn't even call them left wing, because they, like you're saying, they don't have any sort of articulated politics, at least not in this movie, insofar as it's as we want to beat the Empire. But they're a loose coalition of like different people-led factions that are against the intergalactic fascism that the Empire has been doing for almost 2 decades.
And they can't seem to get along.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing about leftist organizing, is that there's a lot of people and everyone has to have a voice and a say. And, that's the messy part of how democracy looks like. It actually was kind of reminiscent of like a DSA meeting, the rebellion meeting. It's just like, all right, we're all going to infight. We are all going to point of order. I need to speak now. We're actually not down with this. We will not caucus with you guys.
And it was kind of, we kind of talk about going back and forth on like what structures of leadership should look like. But what I got, at least from the message from this movie, was like there are at certain points in building a rebellion and building an organization, there are people who do know more, have like more knowledge, and should therefore lead a little bit, because not everyone does have the equal amount of knowledge. For example, they just didn't believe her. She had more knowledge. She had the lived experience and knowledge. I understand them being like, who are you and why are you saying this about Galen? And so how do you feel? Like, I feel like that was the right move for them to rebel against the rebellion and go ahead and decide to move forward with that plan, because they did have more information. What are your thoughts?
No, I do agree. And that's always been a nitpick of mine with this movie is like, why does Jin have one of the biggest microphones at this table? She just joined the rebellion 5 minutes ago, and most of these people have been in the struggle for decades. So it always made sense to me that they were like, hey, we can't actually hang all of our resources and the chance of success on you telling us that you saw this thing, because we don't even know you.
Yeah.
Like I don't know this person. Like, Why would we stake everything that we have fought for
Go to
on
war
this?
for this, yeah.
Yeah, an elite strike team of experts probably would make more sense.
Yeah,
But Saw Gerrera did say that she was his best soldier.
that's true.
She did beat those stormtroopers like a drum.
She absolutely
right.
did. Can we talk about Bodhi Rook? Because I loved this character. I also love Riz Ahmed as an actor. This is the Imperial pilot who defects and really is the only is one of one of the most important factors in this. So I guess it goes back to like nobody here kind of goes back to I think Will a little bit about what you were talking about at the beginning. It made me think a lot about trying to remember how you phrased it, but like not forget, like you can't forget because it's important to tell the truth about like this history and the history, that Bodhi has, having been an Imperial fighter, but also being able to make these decisions. And it seems like his, as you put it, empathy switch kind of comes back on, or he has his own kind of radicalization that leads him to make the choice to defect. And I mean, it's pretty brave what he does.
Absolutely. And my criticism about his story arc does not lie with him. I believe it was Cassian after he takes a shot and kills someone, and Cassian says, "You're a rebel now." I gotta call horse shit. He was a rebel the minute he made his move to leave the Empire. That was when he became a rebel.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that, and especially if we want to take it to real life, we should never base our rebellion on willingness to kill. Never. That is poison to a movement.
Yeah.
Right. And so like I said, it's not a criticism of his character or anything. It's just that was my problem with his arc.
No, that's
Because
really a really good point.
I understand self-defense, but if you can treat the enemy well, they will surrender. But if the enemy thinks you're going to kill them, they're going to fight to the death. Right.
That's such a good point. And that's like, it's such a Hollywood kind of bullshitty moment, Bodhi takes his first shot, kills a stormtrooper. It's like, oh, you're a rebel now. You're right. Like violence does not make a rebel. It's taking the step to rebel, which makes a rebel. And I think the emphasis on the violence, you're right. It's the wrong.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying about Cassian. Cassian's kind of, let's talk about I know that people love Andor, and it sounds like goes on to have a very interesting series where I hear that's a very political series.
Deeply.
But like, he's annoying as hell. He's my least favorite one during this movie, to be honest.
He's an indigenous kid that survived a genocide on a strip-mined planet where he was kidnapped by an outlaw and then made a labor organizer.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That hit different when I thought he was French. The actor, I mean. I didn't.
And just, I know, Riv, you haven't watched Andor, but like just the tiniest bit of context, when we meet Cassian in the beginning of the TV series Andor, he's basically in the same political space that Jyn is when we meet her in this movie, which is like, hey, I'm kind of just like, I'm doing my own thing. I got shit to deal with. I don't have fucking time to talk about politics. So like, that's where he is. And so the series Andor explores, like, how do you go from that to being a revolutionary leader?
And then this movie's after the series.
Yes. Because he dies.
Interesting. Because I think then it just I think the flaws in him, like we're pointing out here, is like maybe it's just this movie, like, maybe if the people who made this TV series, it would be stronger. But like his lack of politics, I think, goes to show it's like that idea of like there is a certain like, yeah, you're a rebel now, and he's a violent streak, and there's just, and also like I will say the storyline between him and Jyn, like, not processed at all. I'm like, at what point did you fall in love with her?
I don't think they did fall in love.
Oh, I felt like it. Well, maybe not, but I felt like that was like pushing towards. That was the vibes I was. Maybe I was reading too much into his steamy eye contact.
Lightly, but there's like they don't do the kiss.
They don't do the
They
kiss.
hug it out at the end. I mean,
Theirs is an interesting relationship because you're watching Jyn, who is non-political, become radicalized throughout the movie, and then you're watching Cassian, who has been in the rebellion for so long and so deep within it that he's kind of just like, heads down, no matter what I do, it's all for the greater good. I am on the good side. So like, no matter what I'm doing,
Yeah.
it's gonna pay off at the end because we are the good guys.
That's the perfect way of saying it. That was my read on like the things, and I guess she wakes him up a little from that, but that's exactly what you're saying, Frank. That's the read on it that I was like, there's something I don't like here. And it's the head down, I've been doing this for so long.
Well, there's the great scene right after she finds out that Cassian, his secret mission was to assassinate her father and not bring him back to the rebellion. And they have that blowout argument, and he says, I was just following orders. And she's like, just following orders? You might as well be a stormtrooper. So like the movie is making this critique. The movie is saying, like, you know, to like, how much compromise can the good guys make until they are also have become the bad guys? Or maybe just not, maybe not the bad guys, but like also bad guys.
I want to talk about Chirrut and Baze. So I think that Chirrut and Baze, I think they were a couple.
Ooh.
Yeah, me too. That's I got that feeling too.
Okay.
Yeah, at the end, after Chirrut dies, he didn't act like his friend died, right? He charged into battle, almost suicidally, maybe, and then after he got hit, he turned his head to look at his friend.
I mean, there are deep friendships like that, but I did get the feeling that if anything, they're life partners, you know?
Yeah,
They are life partners. It was so deep. That was a really moving relationship.
Yeah, I thought that they were great. Giving each other a shit along the way.
I love how this movie brings together these sort of disparate, I don't know, these disparate groups all sort of floating around within the galaxy at this moment to kind of stitch together to form this little band within the rebellion. Like you have Jin, who, you know, is like a class traitor in some ways because she would, you know, was, like, she never got to like really enjoy the spoils of the Empire, but was born within the Empire. Then you have someone like Cassian, who, as you mentioned, was an indigenous person who has felt the destruction of the Empire. You've got Bodhi, who is an Imperial defector, and then you've got Chirrut and Baze, who are sort of like your, I don't know, like your on the ground, like mystic and militant. So you get sort of like that spirituality. And of course they needed someone to be talking about the Force in this movie. They couldn't do a Star Wars movie and not have, they're like, if we're not going to have any Jedi, someone at least has to be like talking about the Force and like trying to use it or something. But it's great. And again, like, I really love how this like core group that we're following are all, other than Felicity Jones, like non-white actors. Because it really like underlines this idea of like, we have these white imperialists and then these people of color who are the ones being oppressed. And yeah, I also just love Donnie Yen. Could watch him fight all day long. Shout out to John Wick 4. He's absolutely unbelievable in.
Oh, the saddest death in the movie was K2.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't get to go be one with the Force.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course, you also have your droid. You have your droid to round it out.
Yeah, Alan Tudyk, who does a British accent so well, I thought he was British for years.
Yep. Very good. Juilliard trained, Alan Tudyk. Did either of you have anything else you wanted to touch on before we...
Yes. I forget which one said it, but one of them said, I think it was Jin quoting Saw. One fighter with a sharp stick and nothing left to lose can take the day. What about Yahya Sinwar?
The Hamas leader?
Yeah, that was dying. He had part of his hand blown off. The drone came in the room, and he threw a stick at it. And then they tried to make fun of him for it.
Yeah.
I saw that, and I was like, holy crap, they're right. Because, I mean, like, if the tables were turned, and, you know, it was an American swinging a stick at his last stand at a drone, he would be getting a statue put up somewhere right now. But because this guy is fighting for freedom in his own way, they try to denigrate him. But
yeah.
I love that quote existed before that happened.
Yeah.
That's a good parallel.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I don't like Hamas. They're a far-right, authoritarian, violent political party. Can't support that. But you know what? Israel's also a violent, authoritarian political party. Far-right, authoritarian. Yeah. And so there are no heroes between Hamas and Israel, but there are Palestinians that meet everything.
The last thing I want to touch on before we go to the awards, and this isn't like a explicit theme of the movie, but if you are familiar with the larger Star Wars lore, you might read into it, which is none of these characters, none of our protagonists survive. Everyone dies in the last battle of this movie. And when we get to A New Hope, there's the scene when we re-meet the rebellion right before, I think, the first Battle of Yavin, where Mon Mothma says, many Bothan spies died to bring us these plans. And she says it very sadly. And that's just like a throwaway line in the first Star Wars movie. And that's like what this entire movie is about.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, watching it now is just a reminder that these movements, these struggles, these revolutions, whatever you want to call them, are the culmination of many, 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 many different people on all different levels organizing and fighting in their own way. And so many of the people who are a part of these struggles are never going to be named. They're never going to be written down in the annals of history. We'll never know, whatever sacrifices that they made, but how integral of a part every single person plays in furthering the cause. I'm a fucking podcast host, social media person. Sometimes I'm like, everything I'm doing is stupid and pointless, but every once in a while someone reaches out and is like, hey, you made me think about something in a different way. And it's like, I don't know, it's just a reminder that there's a lot that goes into these movements and a lot of people, and every single part is crucial, even if even if no one knows your name at the end and everyone dies. You got the Death Star plans. No one would, the other movies wouldn't be able to happen without you.
We have to have a diversity of tactics. If we try to do one thing, they'll figure out and win. We can't afford to think that our political enemies are stupid. If they were stupid, they wouldn't be winning.
Oof.
Or at least appear to be winning.
Yep. All right, well, so this is the point in the episode where we're going to give out awards for this movie. And I think we might have a few other, we'll probably dig into some other stuff here. But if you've never heard this podcast before, we give 3 awards. Our first award is Best Politics. This goes to the character with the best politics in the movie. This is an interesting one. A lot of very flawed politics.
Maybe Jin's dad? Maybe because he was the one that took the moral high ground. Oh, well, or the pilot, because he was doing it for ethical reasons as well.
Sure, Bodhi, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, everybody else is kind of, they're flawed, but that's also people.
I would say Jin, by the end of the movie, maybe has the best politics, or like Cassian by the end of the movie.
I'm leaning towards Bodhi, but Bodhi, Bodhi has a very strong turn, but also still finding what does it mean? What are those? Everyone still seems to be striving for like, what does it now mean? It's hard. I don't know who to give the award to. We get socialism this one. Everyone gets an award.
Or it could be Chirrut and Baze. They're just kind of like, they just kind of come off the streets and they're just like, we hate the fucking Empire. Yeah, we'll fight with you guys.
Yeah, but they are religious fanatics.
Totally. And they're not organizing per se. I would say that I would give the organizers more good politics than sole actors.
Sure. It could be Princess Leia at the end. And that's based on her future politics, but...
Well, I'd say I'm going to give it to Jin.
Jin, yeah. I think her political evolution is the clearest and the strongest.
No, you have to leave room for people to grow.
Yep, there
Absolutely
you go.
Right.
This next one will be a little easier. So this is worst politics. This goes to the character with the worst politics in the movie. They've made this pretty clear, I think. I mean, it's Darth Vader, right?
I bet I've got a different answer.
I don't think Vader has politics.
Vader isn't he the reason the whole thing is happening? Am I wrong? Isn't he like the father of...
No, the Emperor is
He's not the father of the whole thing?
He's Luke's father, but he's the Emperor's protege.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I have an unconventional answer, but I've been thinking about this a lot, and it's George Lucas.
Ooh.
Oh.
Okay.
Tell us
Speak
more.
on
So
it.
we're going to have to go on a little bit of a ride here, right? So in A New Hope, one of the stormtroopers is coming through a doorway and bangs his head on a door, right? So in episode 2, when they are cloning the stormtroopers, they have a scene where Jango Fett, who's the original, bangs his head on something or a door. It might have been a spaceship part. And so George Lucas thought that was funny. There was a CG character that hit his head. It wasn't an accident. So he thought it was funny if the stormtroopers had a genetic predisposition to hit their heads. So that means that the stormtroopers that they're fighting in this movie are the same clones that were in the ends of the last trilogy. Now, the clones are bred for fighting. They are they eat, sleep, fight. Their purpose was to kill the Jedi without malice. It was just following an order, right? And being called a stormtrooper, that is heavily Nazi coded, right? Yeah. And throughout all of Hollywood, Nazis are always like smarmy, effeminate, for lack of a better word, but just these just aloof, petite little guys, or they're giant, hulking, monstrous dudes that just don't think at all. They just follow orders and they're terrible and awful. And that's not what the Nazis were. The Nazis were guys. Mm-hmm. They were just people. They were people that had been told all their lives that the Jews were going to hurt their kids, so they had to go out there and hurt the Jews first. They wanted their kids to have food on the table. They wanted to go home and have a comfortable place to sleep at night. They were just guys. In fact, the Nazis that were doing the killing early in the Holocaust, they couldn't do it for very long before they started punching their own tickets. Ooh. Because people aren't supposed to just murder. We're not built for that. We are more bonobo than chimpanzee. I promise you. And so instead of the stormtroopers just being guys, they're these like basically automatons. And that's not how the world works. And part of the gaslighting that the government did to the American people after the Second World War I was the Germans are uniquely evil. They were these just bloodthirsty guys that just wanted to hurt people. And don't look up Operation Paperclip. We totally didn't hire them.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why George Lucas gets the award or my award for worst politics.
It's a pretty strong
really
pitch.
Interesting. That's a strong pitch.
Yeah, I would say George, or I mean, for the sake, if our audience is going to hold our feet to the fire about picking a person in this movie, I guess I would say Grand Moff Tarkin, because he's highest up on the Empire's org chart.
So he's higher than Vader? I'm so confused by that.
Well, he gave Vader orders in A New Hope.
That's true.
And Leia told Tarkin that she needs to put Vader back on his leash. Mm-hmm. So I honestly don't know the dynamic there.
He's an important bureaucratic functionary.
Okay. They're all bad. They're bad bads. Okay, great. And our last award is Best Supporting Character / Spinoff. This goes to the supporting character that this movie should actually be about. And what I love about this award for this movie is this movie itself, it sounds like, is its own version of this. It's like they were like, we want to hear more about those, what was it, Botham?
The Botham spies.
Those Botham spies that she mentions
Bothams
once.
Died.
Yeah. They're like, make a movie about that.
There was, in the first big fight scene on Judah, there was like a little guy that looked very angry and old. I wouldn't mind a little movie about him. Just
I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah, during the assault on the stormtroopers in Jeddah. Yeah.
Yeah, the pink little fella.
The little pink dude with like the giant shotgun. Yeah, absolutely. My answer is close to that. I would go with Saw Gerrera. I want to see.
Yeah.
I want to see, and like that could be part of like a larger story about the rebellion and the rebellion's politics and the rebellion's organizational structure. Mm-hmm. And that is like Andor does get into that a little bit. But I want to see it from how did Saw Gerrera go from, I don't know, just like your normal rebel, like left-wing rebel to like whatever his version of, so-called extremism is.
Saw was one of mine for sure. I'm curious about the children on this. I mean, we only see 2 children in this whole movie, which I think is interesting. And I'm like, where are all the kids? Like, and the people? And maybe Andor also does more. I'm like, where are all the normal people? What is happening? Because I feel like you see very few civilians. So I wanted more of like the civilian life while all of this is going down.
Well, they'd only really be on Jeddah, if anywhere, because Yavin 4 is a military outpost. There wouldn't be any kids there. Or if they would be, they wouldn't be at the command center.
So there's only one planet that kids exist on?
No. Within the structure of this movie.
Oh, I see.
We went from...
There's other planets.
Yeah, we went from Jin's planet to her work camp, where I hope they wouldn't have kids in the work camp, but they did have those little tiny handcuffs for Boba Frick.
That's true.
I mean, most like if it's going to be like close to the truth of humanity at all, there's definitely children in those work camps.
That's true. there are kids sprinkled throughout the Star Wars universe. Yeah, you're right. We didn't get a lot in this movie, but the Jedi used to have younglings.
And I guess because I think that's like, maybe that's just for me, but like when you were talking about earlier, Will, how this film really kind of shows the deep implications of like war itself. I think one of the most striking moments was when that child is there screaming and she grabs her, because there's, I mean, some of our most famous images are of children in these times of war.
Absolutely.
Will, this was such a pleasure. Thank you truly again for reaching out. Thank you for
Absolutely.
giving me an opportunity to talk about Star Wars. I'm sure much to Riv's chagrin. So last thing we like to do is ask our guests if there's one thing that they do in their daily lives where they get a chance to practice their leftist values. And you can say something that you wanted to bring up, but I also wanted to ask you just more about, because we didn't get a chance to talk about it, a little bit more about Face, if that's okay with you.
I have been kind of organizing with them since 2019. We were planning to start doing some pretty cool stuff in 2020, but then something happened. I'm not sure. Something happened. And so earlier this year, we got together again in February, and we burned our uniforms in solidarity with Aaron Bushnell in downtown Portland. I even threw my ribbons in there. And
oh, wow.
That was pretty cool. Side note, the president of Venezuela saw that on the news and said, like, he went on the news and said he wanted to give us all a hug, which is probably the most surreal thing that's ever happened in my life.
Yeah.
Wow.
But so we've got that. We're working on some other stuff right now. Organizing leftist vets is a lot like herding cats, and they agree. I'm sorry, I don't want to speak for anybody, but the people that I've said that to, they're like, "Yep." So if you're out there, well, if your listener is out there and they're interested, if they're a veteran, it's very easy to find. You can Google it.
And we'll link to it in the show notes of this episode.
Yeah, you apply and then you'll get a call and have a conversation, because there is a bit of a vetting process, because our political enemies are violent people. I mean, they are. And so we need to be able to protect ourselves as well. And, you know, this is the U.S. They should have called it Scam America. There's con men everywhere. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, and after you're in, I mean, like, it didn't work, but earlier this year we tried to keep JRTC out of high schools. The fight's not over yet.
Oh, damn, yeah.
But yeah, because you know, we don't want more you know, kids going off to the war machine. Mm-hmm. And you know, that's one of the things we do.
That's great.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I really wanted to come on here, because I've been thinking about what I do day to day. It's what I want to ask your listeners to do also. I want everybody to learn new skills and get okay at them and move on, because I think we're going to very soon not have the ability to easily find skills on the internet. I think that this is really important. I think if the internet is crushed under the weight of AI, if the Trump administration takes it away to punish us, the people that know how to build the internet all get old and die because they're super old now and people aren't learning to code at the rate they used to. Capitalism infantilizes us. Right?
Yeah.
Like 100 years ago, you knew how to build to build a table, to plant a garden, to sew a pair of pants, to repair your clothes, to do all that kind of stuff. And we don't have those skills anymore. And I want everybody to find weird skills. Like, you're watching a movie, learn to knit, you know, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the knitting problem solved. And then when your neighbor needs a shirt someday because the internet's gone and the power's out and everybody's cold because nobody is creating better structures within our society, like with the power to do so, we're going to need each other. And we're going to have all of these weird little skills that nobody has. And you might be the one to be like, hey, I know how to distill water.
Yeah.
You know, you know, I know how to grow vegetables in a hydroponic bucket, you know, stuff like that. And then you're Mr. Popular or Ms. Popular or them popular,
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what I want everybody to do. I want everybody to be able to help everybody else out with the weird little niche things that nobody ever thought that they were going to need. And everybody out there, everybody can think of something weird that's a little hobby that, hey, in a pinch, that might come in handy.
That's such a good one that no one has suggested yet. Because you're right, self-reliance and knowledge doesn't just help you, it helps your community ultimately.
And I'm sorry, there's another one I really need to talk about. A lot of people are talking about getting guns right now. And I am a gun owner. I have no problem with people having an extra tool in their tool bag for whatever reason. Before you get a gun safety class. But if you're thinking about getting a gun and you haven't taken a first aid kit yet, or first aid class yet, I want you to take a newspaper, roll it up, and thwap yourself right in the nose. No gun until you've taken a first aid class. You get to take a first aid class, and then you get a first aid kit, and then you open it up. You make sure you know how everything works. You look at the reviews to make sure the tourniquet's not going to break because a belt doesn't work, right? Movies have tricked everybody into thinking a belt works. That doesn't work. You need to have that first aid kit, and you need to know how to use it, and you need to be sure that it will work for you. I'm begging everybody out there, get your friend, get two friends, drag them to a Stop the Bleed class somewhere, and then make them get two friends and take them too, because I would so much rather have everyone on all sides, even the MAGA side, know how to save a life, because that's a life that can be brought over.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think I'm going to take a first aid class now that you've said, look,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know how to do any of that shit. And I'm
For real.
I'm trying to organize a first aid class with my friends here.
That's great.
Will, it was such a pleasure meeting you, dude. Thank you
absolutely.
for being such an amazing listener. Thank you for writing in.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story. It means a lot. So
I might
thank
write
you.
in again.
Thank you. Please do.
You write it as much as you want.
Get ourselves a treat.
Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. And if you want to support this show and get access to our Patreon episodes, the link is in the episode description in your podcast player or at mvcpod.com.
Also, as you know, we donate our ad space, so if you're part of a leftist or progressive organization and you'd like to run an ad on this program, please email us at moviesvscapitalism@gmail.com.
For next week, we will be watching the 1989 zany comedy starring Weird Al Yankovic, UHF.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a